Hello, and welcome to Replay Value. I started 86 with low expectations, not because I didn't think it was a cool premise, rather because light novel adaptations run the full gamut from awesome to awful, and it feels like I've seen more that fall on the bad end of that spectrum, or at the very least, I remember those ones. But I thought it started out solidly, enough that I put it in my Nomad video when talking about shows I was enjoying this season, and waited for friends to catch up so we could group watch it together. Figuring it was going to be one of those shows that I would watch week to week with the squad, have some nice moments here and there, but wouldn't rise to a level of quality that it would demand of me, you have to make a video about this, necessitating a rewatch, and here we are. Episode 7 of 86 is one of the best anime episodes I've seen so far this year, which is amazing given how stacked last season and this season are, and, if it wasn't obvious already, I'm just a sucker for good direction, and I like giving credit where credit is due when stories impress me with their writing decisions. So in a callback to that silent voice video I made, we're going to have to talk about the symbolism of fireworks, why your sequence order is important when writing, and yes, it is me after all, the direction and sound design. Fireworks are the symbolic through line of episode 7, titled, Will You Remember Me? We're introduced to them in the opening scene, they are brought back in the final moments, and almost everything that happens in this episode is tied back into fireworks. By my count, there are 3 scenes that don't reference them either through the visual symbolism or the writing. That helps to structure the episode both in the literal sequencing, everything relates back to this element we're familiar with, tying jumps and chronology together seamlessly, and the thematic exploration, which is the bulk of what we'll be talking about in this video. Because of that, it's ideal to go through this episode beat by beat. We open on a piano melody playing over the spearhead unit launching fireworks. We can't hear the fireworks go off or the characters, our audio is only this beautiful solo piano with what I personally hear as a wide emotional spectrum, fitting for not only the nature of this show, but also for the visuals we see before us, both characters laughing and also reservedly reflecting, if not outright crying. That lack of diegetic audio is highlighted as we look at Shin speaking soundlessly as the last fireworks sparkle into the void, after which the show launches into the OP. The opening sequence has a few things worth highlighting beyond the obvious. It sets up the question of what conversation Shin was having with Lena, puts visual emphasis on this crate since it's the first shot after the establishing one, and most importantly, the sequence cues us in that the symbolic meaning of the fireworks will also cover a similar range of emotions. It is more than a simple celebratory sign. Out of the OP, we jump back 10 days to the 15th, to when Lena was sending the special ammunition. Something you're able to intuit as the fireworks, either because of the structural nature of the 2 scenes, or as a direct visual pickup to the box. That yellow stripe and bomb label are very distinct. And moments later, we get the reason why Lena is sending the fireworks. It's the Revolution Festival party in 10 days' time, before she gets back to work, right after tripping in front of other staffers. I'm going to take a brief interlude from our discussion of fireworks to talk about the 3rd scene, because it's a phenomenal example of why visuals and sound working in contrast can be extremely powerful. Lena is walking out of work sullen, and around her are stalls and people having a great time celebrating their country. While we start the sequence hearing the festivities, we cut back to Kurina giving Lena a hard time about being on their comms and breaking down listening to the voices of the Legion, especially when they don't really need her to function as a unit. Lena is thinking about hearing those dead voices, bringing her back to reality. It is the voice of Kurina talking about the brutal, harsh reality of being a soldier, and the somber piano track in the background that plays as we watch the Alba enjoy the peace that they've done nothing for. To pour wine as the blood of the 86 pours out. The similarity of food as something to be consumed and the bodies of the soldiers that the military burns through is brought to a sickening place as Lena gets nauseous. What we see and what we hear and their contrast further expound on the profoundly unfair nature of this country, of the 2 realities that are side by side in this world. The people on the inside don't even know what is happening out there, and so they're able to peacefully laugh and love while they're unknowingly protected by the sacrifice of countless people screaming in pain as they die. The reality of war is not matched by the statue holding a sword, because the protectors do not look like that, and it is not an elegant battlefield. The juxtaposition of these extravagant visuals and heartbreaking audio seem to ask, is this a country worth protecting at all? Why would anyone on the outside fight for a country that is so deeply cruel to them? The next scene isn't super important. It's the midnight convo with Shuga, though I do briefly want to point out that her promise to Shuga to get them reinforcements is both good foreshadowing in his response, as well as expected writing structure to get us into the next scene. I say that because her reason to go into her uncle's office is explicitly to get reinforcements for her unit, and after his broad answer where he allows Lena to take away incorrect information from his statement, he transitions it to the Revolution Festival party, bringing us back to fireworks in terms of the structure. And I do truly appreciate this line.
ドレスを着てパーティーに出席する。ミリゼ家の令嬢にはそれこそが大事な仕事ではないのかね。
My emphasis in the subtitle, because it's a subtle dig at her role as a handler, a job that 1, doesn't really need to be done, and 2, her investment in is viewed as irregular with potential pitfalls, as has been pointed out both by members of the Spearhead and her co-workers. It is a slight middle finger then to her uncle to show up to the party in what is her quote-unquote real job in a black morning dress. It's also, fittingly, because the timeline has now converged with the opening scene, our first sound of a firework, timed out perfectly with Shin calling. There are a lot of elements at play here, and the first thing to tackle is that this, communicating with the Spearhead, is her actual job as she sees it. If that wasn't clear in the show prior, the wearing of black and the walking out of the party to talk to Shin instead of claiming busy is the nail in the coffin. The second is the sound design. We finally get to hear the fireworks from the opening from Lena's perspective, which is cool, especially when it starts to blend with the bangs of the fireworks happening in her vision. This is as close to a shared space that these two characters have had to this point. And a slight element to the visual framing is that they're both in this profile shot facing east to match up even more closely. Personally, I find that this helps to remind the audience that both of these characters have removed themselves from those in their immediate surroundings to talk with the other. There is some obvious closeness being built up here and valuation of their conversation partner. And you could read that as romantic, but you can also read it as a growing familiarity, like in the shared topic of Shin's brother, and in terms of feeling different from those around them, the one responsible for carrying everyone on and ability to hear the Legion, and Lena's opinion on the treatment of 86 serve to isolate them from those in their immediate vicinity, respectively. The conversation goes from light to heavy when Lena brings up the passing of Irma and the others from the last episode. This is why Anju was crying, and it's another reminder that the team is still in mourning, as is she. Another reason why the black dress matches her prioritization in terms of work. And I feel like this is as good a time as any to talk about the literal fireworks. The context in which Lena is watching the fireworks are in celebration for the Revolutionary Festival, presumably the founding of the country or some significant event in its history that changed the political landscape. You can't throw massive parties and celebrate events like this without a semblance of normalcy and safety, which brings up an obvious quandary, and you don't need me to tell you that she has mixed feelings with the current state of affairs, specifically in how they've achieved that normalcy. The Spearhead is launching the fireworks, yes, as a celebration for the date, but Shin explicitly ties it into a gun salute for the fallen. Fireworks in their context are both a celebration of life, the ones currently being lived, but also a rare moment to reflect on those that they've lost. It is in the watching of fireworks that Anju was finally able to cry. Something Shin notes is that she tends to keep these emotions to herself, but in the shared experience of this moment is able to be more open. The different worlds these characters occupy physically goes beyond their actual location. It also deals directly with what this shared symbol means to each in this instant. We don't know the context of the revolution, but one has to assume it wasn't bloodless. And that, for the Alba, this might have been a more somber event closer to the date when the lives were lost and the people were still in the community's memory. But that distance, both in time and from the current front line of the defensive war, give it a different hue than the pressing state that the 86 are going through. And then, the variation on the title question. As the two bond over their shared person in their past, Shin's brother, whom he does not remember but Lena does, Shin asks, leading Lena to reach out her hand as though to grab Shin across the vast distance between them, now facing him in terms of the camera framing and staring at the explosion of the fireworks in the distance as though to memorize this temporary moment in time. Fireworks, physically, explode and fade into nothingness. Lena says, of course she'll remember, but that she won't let anyone else die. A promise that even the visuals of the scene say are impossible. As the remnants of the fireworks disappear over the San Magnolia flag, as though to say that, soon, all she will have is her memories for these people who gave their lives for this 5-color cloth. After the title card, we get a shift in the perspective of the episode. We've been with Lena for everything after the OP, and now we'll be with the Spearhead for the rest of the episode. I think this helps to build, in terms of the way the episode is structured, another wall between Lena and the unit. It reinforces the two worlds that our characters live in. And so we jump back in the timeline yet again to the fireworks being delivered. The supplies getting dropped off is some nice foreshadowing for later in the episode, and a good transition point into the shower scene between Anju and Kurina, which in turn is good foreshadowing as they talk mysteriously about how no one has told Lena yet, and opening questions into Anju's backstory. It's also further evidence that she opened up after the fireworks scene. But the important part of the conversation, as Kurina says she doesn't have the right to tell Lena, with water that looks like tears streaming down her face, which I'd read as sadness in regard to Anju's story about Irma as opposed to an apologetic feeling about her statements at Lena earlier in the episode, is when she thinks about Shin. The horrific juxtaposition of this beautiful piano track and the sun shining down on Shin killing one of his comrades who's been fatally injured as though this is some wonderful action, matched by Kurina's eyes wide and shining as she watches, screams to the absolute atrocity of warfare that requires these things. And yet, as she says, her Reaper will carry her memory and her name to their final destination. But who will carry Shin on? The answer to that question is made obvious as the show cuts to Shin asking Lena if she will remember them as he watches the fireworks. That transitions us with the same piano melody to 2 days later in the field. Fireworks are a celebration of life and a remembrance of death. They burn brightly and quickly before disappearing into nothingness, and in that way they are a fitting way to interpose the deaths of the Spearhead members as the rest run away. Their last moments remembered and represented by something that is inevitably snuffed out. All that remains are holes to the heavens, one for each struck down. And that brings us fittingly to where this episode began, the field where the Spearhead unit launched its fireworks. It is both the plot conclusion to the reinforcements question that's been hovering over the episode since the fourth scene when talking with Suga, and it's the end to our discussion of fireworks thematically for this episode. This unit, and they are all aware of this, is an execution ground. There will be no reinforcements until every single one of them has died. It does not matter what Lena does. This is the policy of the Republic and its military. When Lena asks the obvious question of why fight then, Suga gives an eloquent response about how there are good and bad people on both sides of the metaphorical wall, that their unit has experienced good things from Alba, and bad things from the other 86. So while it is not ideal to die on behalf of the nation oppressing you, it's fine by him. It's a matter of pride. To fight for those who died for the cause already, to be a better person than those who sent them to their deaths, and for the sake of survival. And at this moment, the lighting shifts, the moon comes out, showing the extinguished fireworks from 2 days ago, as Lena asks, how can they choose to fight even though they know they'll die? As though the fireworks are the representation of death, not only for the 86 who came before, but for their future as well. Suga replies that if the two options presented to you are fighting until you die, or giving up and dying, there's only one real option.
死刑台に登るのは決まってても登り方は選べるだろってそういう話だ。俺たちは選んで決めた。あとはその通り生き延びるだけだ。
And tonally, this scene feels triumphant, with the lighting having fully shifted from dark and depressing to moonlight empowering the face of Suga, defiantly looking at the graveyard of fireworks. The words and the music tell us that they will not fall to the same fate as their forebears, that they will survive. Fireworks are not an applicable symbol to them. But the visuals tell us another story. As we cut to the other members of the Spearhead, they are intercut with the fireworks from 2 days ago. They will burn brightly, they will fight, and one day, they will die. Because a force larger than any one person will ensure it, just as the laws of thermodynamics ensure that a firework will not burn forever. That does not mean that those moments are not important or powerful. It does not mean that the decision is meaningless. Rather, the temporary nature of those things makes them more valuable. The memories that much more precious. Shin will carry them on with him after they're gone. And as we cut one last time to the fireworks from 2 days ago disappearing, we see Shin in the final shot. And we were encouraged to remember the question he asked Lena as he saw them fade into the night.
少佐は俺たちのことも忘れないでいてくれますか?
And presumably satisfied with her declaration that she will, he closes his eyes. Some brief thoughts. The ED, in case you thought my read on the final two shots is baseless, is literally a callback to Lena reaching her arm out during the fireworks after Shin says that line. There's a reason why it's the shot for the first portion of this version of the ED, and it's because they want you to think back to that moment. The rest is to also point out the flaw in her promise, as Shin shoots a teammate and her fist is when she pledged that no one else would die, now in a different context after these 4 deaths in this episode. 86 doesn't love cutting from one side of a para-raid conversation to another. In all 3 examples in this episode, it doesn't happen. It can work, but the decision not to brings us into the mindset and the viewpoint of the characters we can see. When we're with Lena talking with Shuga earlier in the episode, we're inclined to take Shuga and Theoto's voices at face value. The voice actors do a great job of suggesting that they're not telling the whole truth, but without making it overly obvious. It's another reason why I love the opening scene and re-tackling the same moment from Lena's perspective later. We as viewers are able to connect the 2 moments visually in our heads, while still focusing on Shin's audio question and Lena's visual reaction. It's also why I have to give Lena's voice actor props, because she has to emote a lot to get her sadness, heartbreak, and confusion across in the final scene, and she totally nails it. Ito Tomohiko really impressed with his episode direction, though I shouldn't be shocked given that he did SAO Episode 1, which is genuinely fantastic, and I think it goes without saying that Nagai Chiaki, credited for the episode screenplay, and Asato Asato, the original creator, deserve hella props. This episode is being released probably right around as I started watching Episode 8 with my friends, so hey, if something comes up there or in a later episode that either adds or takes away from my points here, let me know with a comment. Thank you for watching, and until next time, take it easy.